Hello guys, welcome to Hardspace Shipbreaker. It's a new game in early access on Steam, and this is going to be my first episode of my How to Shipbreaker series. In this series, we're going to show you guys how to break down the various ships in the game, and how to do it fast and efficiently. I'm going to start off showing you guys how to salvage a grade 2 ship, specifically the Mackerel. These ships give roughly 3.5 to 5 million, and we're going to go with the transport variant. They're pretty easy to break down, so let's hop right into this. Okay, we're in the game. So first things first, we're going to rip off everything off the outside of the ship. That starts with the antennas and then the engine pods for me. You can do whatever order you want. This is just how I started, and that's how I'm probably going to keep doing it. So you can just take those the antenna off by just pulling them off, and then the engines you have to cut them off. So on these earlier ships, these Mackerel ships, the grade 2s, the engine pod cut points will be on the outside of the ship. So you can just cut them right there, and then I was trying to force push the engine here, trying to save a tether, but it wasn't working because the engines were too heavy, so I just had to use a tether in the end to get the engines down onto the barge. I'm going to go ahead and cut the second engine off, and then that'll be it for the outside. So next step, I like to locate the airlocks. I use my scanner to do it. You can just look for the airlock badge or that like teal color to find where it is on the ship. You can also float around and see if you can find it. I like to use the scanner to save a bit of time. So we're going to go ahead and hop in here, get through the airlock, and then see if we can vent the ship.
Salvage secured. Credits deposited.
So the vent is going to be right above the door here. We're going to vent the ship
Pressure level decreasing.
using that, and then we're going to activate the airlock again to open both doors. Now the ship's completely depressurized. Next thing I like to do normally is get the repair packs off the walls. If there's anything floating around, like utility keys or the data boxes that you can find, I like to go ahead and grab those. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start cutting all the joints on the inside of the ship. So we're going to cut the floor joint there, and then we're going to cut the pilot and cockpit of these joints. So the reason I like to cut these is once you cut these, the cockpit is free floating. So you can let it start floating away, and then eventually later on I'm going to start pushing it away with my head. So cutting it early on kind of just gives me an advantage because it lets me push lets the cockpit have time to float away. So this is one of the tricks I like to use to get into this back room without having to cut through the door. Saves you a little bit of money, not really a lot of the time or anything like that. I couldn't really fit between this chair and the door though, which is unfortunate, so we're just gonna have to go in this little later gap to go get it. There's the other floor joint for in the reactor room. That floor is loose now. Cut the last joint here. That floor is loose. And then I think I cut this joint right here already. Yes, I did. So we're going to use our jetpack to push these panels out of the ship. It's one of the tricks I like using because the grapple gun doesn't do a great job at like pushing objects around. It's easier to use your jetpack to do it. For that, we're going to take all the bottom panels, use the tethers to drag them into the processing area. A little mistake there, I tethered my other panel, but no big deal. One other trick you can use that you just saw me use is you can grab onto something and then use the reel to pull yourself into the ship. So grab onto it and use right click to pull yourself to the ship. Next step is removing that reactor. I like to just use a tether to do it because it's fast and easy. And then once the reactor is out, we're going to cut all the joints in the reactor room. Same idea with this back panel, or the engine part at the back there. We're going to cut those joints off so that we can let it start free floating and get a little bit of distance away from the ship, just to make our lives easier down the line. We're going to go ahead and finish cutting the rest of the joints in the ship. The top panels, or the cut joints for the top panels right there, and these cut joints over here. There is one caveat to that forward panel that I just cut. That one is different on the cargo ships, and I'll throw in a little clip at the end on how you should do that on cargo ships. We're going to throw these panels into the processor just like we did with the floor panels.
Valuable object processed. Credits deposited.
One more thing to note would be I do have 15 tethers. You can't unlock that at the start of the game, so I'm only going to use 10 to make it a little bit more realistic. So after you have all those panels away, what we're going to do is we're going to start pushing away the cockpit using our head and our thrusters. Like I said, you can't really use the grapple gun to do this because the grapple gun doesn't have enough force to do it. Your jetpack has a bit more force. And then while we're pushing this cockpit away, we're going to cut the joints on the inside just to be a little bit more efficient with our time. There you go, you can see me crawling into the space a bit more. That's because the cockpit is finally far enough away from the back of the ship for me to get in there. So there we go, that's all those cut. And then we're going to come back here and buy some more tethers, pretending like we only have 10 in stock. And then another little neat trick you just saw me do is you can grab onto the bottom of the ship and then reel yourself in to the buy station, I guess. So you do want to be careful with that though, because the reel, as it pulls you in, it pulls you up. So if you go in a bit too fast or you try and do that a little bit too much, it's hard to keep control. Next step is tearing these panels off, so we're going to send those into the processor using a tether, and then we're going to pull these coolant tanks off the side after those panels are clear and throw them onto the barge.
Salvage secured. Account
This
credit
one,
applied.
it was something weird like a visual bug or something, but I didn't see these cut joints when I was pushing the thing away, which is a bit weird, so we're just going to have to go back and cut these now. So now that that's cut, we're going to throw it into the processor, then we're going to pull the coolant tank off and we're going to throw that down onto the barge. And that's the front of the ship nearly processed. The cockpit still has some goodies in it, so we're going to let it float around while we pull some other stuff off the ship. The next step of this teardown process is going to the side of the ship opposite of the airlock. There's a special reason for this that you'll see later down the line. It makes it easier to get rid of that airlock piece. So we're going to cut the joints in here, and then we're going to get that fuel tank released from the walls. Sometimes that causes issues in some of the ships. Sometimes they'll see the fuel tank is still connecting it to the main ship, so I like to drag it off there like I did, just to make sure it's not going to cause any problems. I'm going to throw those panels in the processors and then throw that fuel tank on the barge. I'm going to throw this battery on the barge also.
Account credit applied. Salvage deposit accepted.
So that's all done. Next we're going to hop in the back here. So we're going to hop in this side of the ship. So it's nice to go around in the same pattern I do, just because this gives you fast access to all the joints you need. And it kind of gives you a routing pattern around the ship that's easy to follow. So throwing that fuel tank out, making sure it's not connected to anything causing problems. And then throw all the panels in the processors, and then we're going to throw that fuel tank down into the barge. Now that your ship's all floating in various pieces around you, we're going to move on to getting this engine piece out of the way. So these ones you can just pull the engine off the back, and then I like to just throw it into the processor. No point in wasting a tether on that. And then we're going to pull this engine out. And then again, we're going to throw it down onto the barge so we don't waste a tether. And I'm using a charge shot there. That's something you'll unlock later on when you're playing the
Salvage
game.
secured. Account
I'm
credit
going to use 2
applied.
tethers on this piece because it's particularly heavy. Now we're going to go ahead and ditch our interior. So you can pull everything off now that the floor and the ceiling is gone. It's pretty easy to float around on the inside here. Not bumping
Salvage
into anything
deposit
really.
accepted. Credits
So there go all the
transferred.
chairs. And then in the cargo version, you'll probably have cargo floating around on the inside. In the transport version, you have these chairs sitting around. So it depends on what ship you pick, but whichever one you have, just throw your chairs or throw your cargo out onto the barge. And then this little piece of scrap is floating around, so I decided to throw it into the furnace.
Salvage deposit accepted. Credits transferred.
Next thing is we're going to go ahead and cut off the airlock. The reason we're cutting off the airlock right here as opposed to cutting through the airlock is I find that this area right here is easier to cut through. When you're trying to cut through the airlock, you tend to not get the cuts quite right, so you have to cut the thing several times and you end up wasting a lot of time. So if you cut right here, it's fast and it's easy. You won't be saving the aluminum from the airlock because you have to throw that in the furnace, but it's just a quick way to get rid of that big piece.
Caution.
We're going for speed and efficiency here. We could pull out all the pieces on the inside there, but that's just going to waste our time. So, airlock is gone. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the barge to go buy some tethers and I guess a little bit of oxygen. Again, using that tether and pull maneuver to get me there a little bit faster. Now, I do have 5 tethers left, but again, like I said earlier, I have the 15 tethers unlocked, so I'm going back here to simulate it like I only had 10 tethers unlocked. So now that we're going back here, that back part is empty of all the stuff that's valuable, so we're just going to throw it in the furnace. You could spend the time to remove those lights on the inside or cut it up more, but again, it's kind of a waste of time. You don't really need to. So now back to the cockpit, where all our goodies are still sitting. We're going to pull those chairs out first, and then we're going to pull off the electronic panels. And that's probably going to be, that is the last step of our teardown process. Again, you could cut the glass out, and you could cut the floor panels out and stuff to get a little bit more profit, but it just wastes a lot of time. So there goes both the chairs, and pull the electronic panels out.
Credit applied.
Again, be careful with these because they like to break very easily if you pull them into stuff fast. I'm using the reel button here. It's the right click on the grapple gun to pull this stuff into me so I don't have to float around or like float backwards to pull these out.
Salvage deposit accepted.
An interesting little glitch here also again. I don't know what happened here, still kind of don't, but it looked like the electronic panel glitched out and then flew off into nowhere. So we're not getting that one, I guess. So that's the cockpit essentially stripped out. There's a few lockers in there you could pull out also if you want to. I didn't really want to, I just wanted to go for speed in this. That being said, I'm throwing the chips bag into the furnace. So I guess I wasn't kind of lollygagging here. Cleaning up a little bit more. Yeah, there's a few lockers in that pilot's area that you can pull out if you're feeling like it. And we're going to watch that go in there, and that is the end of our salvage. That's everything cleaned up. I think I found one more piece of junk. I was just trying to make this area clean, and I missed the furnace. Just trying to get that area clean. It was a waste of time. You don't need to do that. And that is the end of our shift. So we got a total of 2.5k out of the ship. I think this ship only had 3.5k to begin with, or 4k, so that's pretty good profit. We made most of our profit right there off the nanocarbon and the reactors that I'm pointing out with my mouse there. And then we got a bit from the thrusters also, so those are the pieces that you want to get off the ship. Those are your priorities. Everything else is kind of knickknacks. And those computer terminals are also worth a fair bit. They take a while to pull out per computer panel, so don't really worry about it. And that right there is the aluminum we lost to the airlock, or at least part of it. And there's some aluminum, so comparing the prices there, I think 7,000 versus destroyed, it's not really that much to begin with, so we don't really need to worry about it. That might actually be the airlock amount. The airlock has a large chunk of aluminum, but again, that's only like 14k, so not much lost. And then we lost a little bit of nanocarbon and a little bit of titanium, but it's whatever. With all that being said, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I'm going to throw in a little clip here at the end on how to break apart the top cargo panel on the cargo version of the Mackerel, but it's not really that big a deal. It's also pretty easy. I'm sure you can figure it out by yourself. Still going to include the clip just for the people who want a little bit extra. I'd appreciate if you guys could leave me some feedback down below in the comments. Is the audio okay on this? Do the voiceovers sound good? Anything like that, leave that down in the comments below. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, leave a dislike if you didn't, and tune in next time when we break apart the next ship in this series.